The night sky stretched endlessly above the state of Georgia. At 35,000 feet, the gentle lighting in the first-class cabin of Horizon Airlines, Flight 827 lulled its passengers into a dreamlike haze. No one knew that in just a blink a storm would erupt, not from the skies outside, but from deep within the human heart. Amara Jackson, a black woman in her early 30s, sat in seat 3A by the window. In her arms was her 6-month-old son Isaiah, peacefully asleep, his head resting on his mother's chest, occasionally letting out soft breaths like a passing breeze. She wore a simple navy blue dress, no flashy brand, no luxurious jewelry, but she radiated a quiet elegance that words couldn't quite capture. Her deep brown skin glowed under the cabin lights, as if she carried a light of her own, gentle yet impossible to ignore. The flight moved along smoothly, until Clare Ramsay appeared. Clare was the chief flight attendant on board, a white woman around 40, her blonde hair pulled tightly into a flawless high bun. Her deep blue uniform was perfectly pressed, and the sharp click of her heels against the aircraft floor sounded like a declaration of the authority she believed she possessed. Clare's face was sharp, lips painted in bold red, eyes ever judging, especially when they landed on passengers she felt were unfit for the first-class experience. And this time, her target was Amara Jackson. As Isaiah let out a quiet breath in his sleep, Clare shot a sideways glance toward them. A flicker of irritation crossed her face, as though she'd been disturbed by something unworthy of existing in her world. No one expected what happened next. Clare strode over like a brewing storm, stopping at Amara's side. "Please keep your child quiet. This is the first-class cabin," she said coldly, snappish, yet still within the bounds of so-called professional service. Amara looked up, her gaze calm. "I'm sorry. He's just asleep and stirred a little. I've been trying to keep him quiet." Clare didn't reply. She glanced down at Isaiah, then back at Amara with a look of sheer contempt. Not a word was exchanged, no profanity, no threats. But in that moment something inside Clare snapped. No one had time to react. Clare Ramsay raised her hand and slapped Amara Jackson across the face. The sound cracked through the cabin like a whip. A sharp smack shattered the quiet, leaving the entire first-class section frozen in shock. It wasn't just a slap to the skin. It struck at dignity, at history, at memories no one in that cabin could begin to measure. Isaiah startled and wailed, his infant cries muffled by the shock. Amara turned her head, her hand cradling her cheek, now flushed red and marked with the outline of fingers. But what stunned Clare wasn't the crying or the horrified stares from the surrounding passengers. It was the voice that rang out from the intercom. "Clare Ramsay, you're finished!" The voice was deep, steady, and thunderous, like a rumble within a storm. It filled the cabin, cutting through leather seats and polished appearances, striking Clare like a blow to the face. She spun toward the cockpit, her expression pale. "What the hell?" Clare muttered, the sneer on her face gone in an instant. Amara said nothing. She sat still, holding her child close, her dark eyes locked on Clare, autumnless and unblinking. No outburst, no tears. Just a chilling composure, more unsettling than any rage. Passengers began murmuring. Some discreetly turned on their phones to record. Others stared at Clare in disbelief. Whispers flew. Did someone just speak over the intercom? "He said Claire's done?" Who could say that unless they're... The answer came faster than expected. The intercom came alive again, this time firmer, clearer. "This is Marcus Ellison, CEO of Horizon Airlines. The woman you just struck is my wife." First class erupted like an earthquake. Those who had stayed silent now gasped aloud. An older woman stammered, "The CEO's wife?" A young Latina woman blurted out, "Oh no, she's toast. Clare Ramsay wavered, her face drained of all color. She gave a shaky laugh. "This is a joke, right? Someone's messing with me." But then came the sound of footsteps from the cockpit, firm, deliberate. The flight captain, Captain Holloway, a broad-shouldered man in his 50s with graying hair, stepped out. His eyes sliced through the tension in the cabin. He walked straight to Claire, voice like ice. "Clare Ramsay. To the galley. Now." There was nothing more to be said. Claire was escorted away, like a criminal under the watchful eyes of everyone on board. But before she disappeared, she leaned toward Amara and whispered just loud enough for only her to hear, "You think you've won? I'll get you." A venomous whisper, unheard, unseen. But Amara heard it. She clutched her child tighter, and her gaze, once calm, now turned sharp as a blade. She didn't reply. Just silence. And within that silence a storm was brewing. A few passengers gently patted her shoulder in quiet support. A teenage boy in a hoodie gave her a thumbs up. The gestures were small, but they told Amara she wasn't alone. In the galley, Clare Ramsay was already scheming. She called a union rep and fired off urgent texts. A covert battle had begun, phones vibrating, tweets being drafted, and a lie beginning to take shape. She provoked me. The baby screamed. I was just following protocol. Amara didn't know everything that was unfolding, but she could feel it, clearly. Something dark was waiting for her ahead. The cabin lights remained dim and gentle, but the atmosphere in first class had completely shifted. Gone were the indifferent stares and passengers absorbed in their screens. Now, all eyes were fixed on seat 3A, where Amara Jackson sat, one arm wrapped around her baby, the other resting lightly on her cheek, where Clare Ramsay's slap still blazed red. But Amara did not crumble. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She stayed silent. Her eyes, deep, dark, and resolute, remained fixed on the airplane window where clouds drifted by like thin wisps of smoke. The woman who had been slapped in front of dozens of people hadn't shed a single tear, and it was precisely that calm that earned her respect. At the back of the plane, behind a heavy curtain in the galley area, Clare Ramsay was waging a very different battle, a battle to salvage her reputation. She had discreetly activated her cell phone. Her fingers, red and tense, tapped quickly across the screen. The first message was sent without hesitation. "Ted." She just threatened me. Provoked. The baby was crying nonstop. I acted for passenger safety. Ted, union representative for the flight crew, a man known for managing delicate situations, replied within seconds, "Don't say anything else to anyone. Send the video. I'll take care of it." Claire pressed her lips together and glanced toward the cabin's security cameras. But she knew well. The cameras only captured shared spaces, no audio. And more importantly, the moment she raised her hand, if seen from a certain angle, could be interpreted differently. It was Ted who had once taught her this trick. How to manipulate the story by trimming the truth. And now she used it again. Claire pulled from her pocket a backup phone she always kept hidden. On it were dozens of secretly recorded clips of passengers, for just such emergencies. This time she quickly stitched together a video. A clip of her stepping back, shouting, while Amara turned her face away, her hand resting on baby Isaiah's shoulder. Claire carefully edited a moment when Amara adjusted the blanket to make it look like she was swinging her arm toward her. A false narrative had begun to take shape. A counterfeit victim was born. Back in seat 3A, Amara could feel that something was wrong. Not from Claire, but from how a few passengers were starting to look at her. The sympathetic eyes from earlier were changing. Some had started to doubt. Why would the CEO let his wife fly dressed so plainly? I heard she said something before she got slapped. She's way too cold. Doesn't act like a victim at all. These whispers weren't loud enough to be clear, but loud enough to sting. Sometimes people didn't need the truth. They just needed a reason to believe what they wanted. Her phone vibrated. A message from Marcus. "I'm calling the lawyers. Stay put. Claire just sent a message to the union claiming you struck first." Amara gripped the armrest. She knew this wouldn't end with just a slap, and she was right. On the ground, news was beginning to spread. Footage taken by a passenger showing Claire being summoned to the galley was going viral on X, formerly Twitter. In just 15 minutes, thousands of shares erupted with headlines like, "Racist flight attendant gets exposed by CEO's wife mid-flight." The popular aviation news site Skywave posted a banner headline, "Mid-air media crisis, Horizon CEO's wife, slapped in first class by chief flight attendant." But almost simultaneously, an anonymous account, unbeknownst to all, run by Ted, released an edited clip from Claire's angle. Amara Jackson aggressively approached crew. Exclusive onboard footage. The internet began to split into two. One side was outraged by the clear racial discrimination. The other questioned the CEO's wife narrative, accusing her of staging the incident for PR, claiming she stirred the pot for attention and special treatment. And while the tweet storm grew, Claire posted a carefully crafted status update. "Today I was attacked by a passenger in first class while trying to do my job. Suspended for defending passenger's peace. I'm heartbroken." Flight attendant life. Reverse racism. Within an hour, 10,000 likes, 2,000 shares. And most terrifying of all, threats started flooding in, aimed at Amara. Back on the plane, the intercom sounded again. "We are preparing to land in Los Angeles. Please fasten your seatbelts." Amara held her baby closer. She could feel not just the pull of dissent, but a tidal wave of public opinion beginning to drown her in suspicion. Claire emerged from the galley after being informed by the captain that she would be suspended upon landing, but her face didn't show defeat. On the contrary, she smiled, a tactical smile. And before retreating to the crew's private area, Claire leaned toward a young flight attendant, Laya, a rookie with wide, innocent eyes, and whispered, "You know which side to stand on, right?" Laya didn't respond, but her eyes darted, uncertain. And that silence was all Claire needed. No one remains neutral in a war where the truth is manipulated. At LAX airport, just 20 minutes after landing, a small crowd had already gathered at the arrival gate. Among them were people holding signs that read, "Protect our workers," others live streaming, and some just standing, waiting for the curtain to fall. Marcus Ellison had arrived early, tall, composed, but with eyes that burned like slow fire. When Amara appeared, he stepped forward and embraced her and Isaiah without a word. His presence made a few in the crowd falter, but not all. A middle-aged man in a red cap shouted, "Privilege! Who do you think you are?" A blonde woman screamed, "Slap a flight attendant and blame her. You're not fooling us." Marcus shielded Amara behind him, his gaze unwavering as he stared down the crowd. A security officer approached, but it was Marcus who silenced them with words, "Back off. My wife was assaulted, and I have proof." No one responded, but the phones remained raised. The live streams continued. Social media had become a courtroom where emotion always preceded reason. That night at home, just as Amara laid Isaiah in his crib, her phone vibrated. A call from a blocked number. When she picked up, only one sentence came through. "We know where you live. People like you will never belong here." The call ended, but the echo did not. Amara collapsed onto the floor, hands trembling. Marcus rushed in from the other room, but she didn't cry. She just looked at him and whispered, "We're no longer in a misunderstanding. This is war." The Los Angeles sky was pitch black. Night winds swept through palm-lined streets, making the windows shudder faintly. Inside the quiet home of Amara and Marcus, all the lights were off, except in one room, the living room. Amara sat on the sofa, the glow of the late-night news casting shadows across her weary face. Isaiah slept in her arms, his small breaths, the only thing keeping her from falling into the abyss. On the screen was her image, but not the real her, a version fabricated to destroy her. According to internal sources from the airline union, passenger Amara Jackson engaged in verbal assault against Chief Flight Attendant Clare Ramsay before the altercation on Horizon Flight 827. Alongside the report, the same edited clip was played. Amara had now seen it 3 times, in which she was framed as the aggressor. She reached toward Claire, then the video faded out, never showing the moment Claire slapped her. The anchor didn't even pretend to be neutral. A woman dressed modestly, claiming to be the wife of the airline's CEO, used her husband's power to demand privileges on board, while the crew member was simply trying to maintain peace for other passengers. Amara turned off the TV. She didn't need to hear more. Meanwhile, in a dark room on the outskirts of Van Nuys, Clare Ramsay sat in front of a laptop, eyes gleaming like a predator drunk on blood. She was orchestrating a campaign. Messages flashed across the screen. Edit version 4 uploaded. Pinned on Twitter, bots are boosting Urgger fake CEO wife and Urger's justice for Clare to trending. Preliminary police reports submitted with over 37,000 supporting signatures. She wasn't smiling anymore. She didn't need to. Everything was going according to plan. She didn't just want revenge. She wanted Amara erased. Erased from work, from dignity, from family. Erased from Claire's world. And the final piece had already been set in motion hours ago. 11:42 p.m. A police cruiser screeched to a halt outside Amara's house. No lights, no siren. 2 officers stepped out. One was a white man with close-cropped blonde hair, the other a woman with a cold stare, and her hand already resting on the handcuffs. 3 knocks. Clean. Firm. Marcus came to the door, still in a t-shirt, frowning. "What's going on?" The male officer held out a sheet of paper. "We have a warrant for the arrest of Amara Jackson. Charges: assault on a flight crew member, disturbing the peace, and obstruction of official duties." Amara froze in the doorway. "I'm the victim," she stammered. "We have video evidence," the female officer replied coldly. "You have the right to remain silent." "No, I have proof. Millions saw the live stream," Marcus shouted, stepping in front of his wife. "You're arresting an innocent person." The officers pulled out the cuffs. They didn't need logic. They didn't need the truth. They had orders, and a system fooled into legitimizing a lie. Amara was dragged away. Isaiah screamed in Marcus's arms. The door slammed shut, leaving a chilling void inside their home. 1 a.m., Los Angeles County Police Station. Amara sat alone in an interrogation room, one hand cuffed to the chair. A flickering neon bulb above buzzed incessantly. No one had spoken to her for nearly an hour. Finally, an officer entered, tablet in hand. He sat across from her, expressionless, and held the screen out for her to watch. The video began with her saying something, audio muted. Claire is stepping back. Claire was clutching her face. Then a cut to Amara carrying Isaiah away from her seat. Cut. End of video. "Anything you'd like to say?" the officer asked. "It's fake," Amara replied, voice low and weary. "That video's edited. Where's the part where she slapped me? Where's the part where I picked up my crying baby? You'll stand trial. In the meantime, we're holding you for 48 hours. I want to call my lawyer. We're contacting one, but it's 1 a.m., ma'am. Meanwhile, back home, Marcus was losing his mind. He called their lawyer, Evelyn. She was in San Francisco for an early morning court appearance, but the moment she heard arrested and fake video, Evelyn checked out of her hotel and booked the first flight out. She texted Marcus, "Stay calm. Don't post anything online. They want you to snap so they can frame you as a threat." Marcus threw his phone on the couch. He looked over at Isaiah, still crying, then stormed into the home office, turned on the big screen and began downloading every original video, every comment, every post from the online community that once stood by them. He needed the truth, and he would not let Amara be devoured by this power play. The next morning, social media exploded. The Justice for Clare account posted, "Breaking. Woman who claimed to be the Horizon CEO's wife, arrested for multiple violent acts. Police confirm sufficient video evidence." Attached was a photo of Amara, handcuffed, head bowed, flanked by 2 officers. The comments were a storm of hate. Serves her right. Thinks she's royalty just because she flew first class. Lying about being slapped. She should be ashamed. A handful of voices pushed back, but were quickly drowned by the tidal wave of vitriol. Amara, once a victim, had now become a name met with contempt. At the police station, someone quietly entered. Evelyn, gray blazer, hair in a tight bun, eyes like blades. She handed over an emergency order from a federal court demanding Amara's immediate release, based on newly uncovered evidence showing the video edits originated from servers linked to the airline union. A guard nodded. 15 minutes later, Amara walked out, puffy eyes, pale face, but her posture was upright. Evelyn greeted her with one sentence. "It's time to strike back." Meanwhile, Clare Ramsay, now hiding in a rented apartment on the city's outskirts, held a glass of wine, eyes glued to her screen. She saw Amara walk free, saw Evelyn, saw Marcus's first tweet reappear. The truth doesn't need editing. Lies require an entire system. Claire's face darkened. She messaged Ted, the man managing Media Spin and backdoor connections. "They've started to fight back. Plan B," Ted replied. "Got it." No more videos. This time, we burn everything down. The early morning sunlight slipped through the curtains, gently illuminating Amara Jackson's face. She hadn't slept. Her eyes were swollen from stress. Her mind was spinning between news headlines, fake videos, toxic comments, and Isaiah's gaze, still looking at her as if she were the only safe place in the world. On the wall, a large screen ran a breaking news ticker. Horizon CEO's wife released after overnight detention, public reaction deeply divided. Marcus entered the room carrying a cup of coffee and an iPad, his face heavy with concern. "Claire just appeared on live TV," he said. "Not as the accused, but as the brave victim." Amara clenched the armrest. Marcus played the video. On air, Claire wore a plain white blouse, her blonde hair loose, her eyes moist, her voice weak yet dramatically composed. "I was just doing my job. When people are rich, famous, they think they can do anything. I was scared, I've cried every night, but I can't stay silent anymore." The studio audience applauded. The host nodded solemnly. "You're so brave." The American media had chosen a side. Claire was winning the emotional battle, and she knew it. In a luxury apartment rented with funds from a human rights foundation for service industry workers, covertly controlled by Ted, Claire was holding a closed-door meeting with 3 men, Ted, a media spin expert, and another man, dark-skinned, eyes sharp as blades, whose name wasn't introduced. Claire tapped her fingers on the table, each tap precise. It's time to escalate. Ted nodded and slid a folder across the table. Home address, security system, camera images, even Marcus's sister's name. The dark-skinned man, called Donnie, smirked. You want psychological threats or direct action? Claire gave a soft smile, her eyes icy. I want them too scared to sleep. Burn a corner. Let them know. I control everything. She might be the CEO, but I'm the one writing the narrative. That night, just after Amara had rocked Isaiah to sleep, she received an anonymous text message. Trash like you belongs in the slums. You don't belong in that fancy house. We're coming. Amara froze. Before she could react, a faint clink sounded outside. Marcus bolted from his office and ran outside. A glass bottle had shattered on the front steps, shards scattered everywhere. Inside the bottle was a piece of paper, scrawled in messy handwriting. Get out of American aviation. This is your first warning. Marcus called the police. 30 minutes later, an officer arrived. He took notes, snapped pictures, but in the end simply shrugged. No exterior cameras, no eyewitnesses. Might have been teenagers messing around. First warning? Marcus pressed. You don't think this is serious? The officer lowered his voice. I'd recommend you leave for a few days. Hotel or somewhere safer. Things are heating up out there, and not everyone's on your side. Amara stood still. This house was her home. It was where she carried her pregnancy, where she raised her child, where she and Marcus had fought through so much to build their lives. And now, one of the threats made everything feel fragile. She turned to Marcus and whispered, I'm not leaving. If I run, I'm giving Claire another win. Marcus squeezed her hand. I get it, but we need to prepare. The next day the flood began. Messages, emails, spam calls. An ex-account spread a rumor. Amara used her husband's charity fund to build a mansion. A political blogger posted a clip. Horizon CEO tries to silence workers through power abuse. Search volume for Amara Jackson abuse of power surged 400% on Google. And then, footage from the Jacksons' home security, someone had hacked the system, spread online. The clip showed Marcus carrying Isaiah while helping Amara into the house after court. It was twisted into a false narrative. The CEO forces his employee to serve him at home like a slave. Evelyn, their lawyer, called that night. Claire's moved from personal attacks to character assassination. This is psychological warfare. Marcus sighed. We're about to lose society itself. Evelyn. If she's willing to breach your home, we need hard evidence. Do you have private cameras? Marcus nodded. He had installed a separate system not connected to the internet, and that was their ace in the hole. Early the next morning, while the household slept, a loud boom echoed in the backyard. Amara bolted upright and ran down with Marcus. The smell of gasoline hit them. A fire blazed beside the tool shed. Marcus disabled the alarm and rushed out with a hose. Amara clutched Isaiah and called 911, her voice trembling. Someone set fire to my house. This is the second warning. It's intentional. By the time the police and firefighters arrived, the flames had been contained, thankfully not spreading into the home. But when Marcus reviewed the private camera footage, he found something critical. Donnie's face, visible, walking into the yard at 2:37 a.m., lighting the fire and fleeing. Evelyn immediately compiled the footage and sent it to the authorities with a formal alert. Coordinated attack. The intent to set fire to the home of an innocent family, driven by racial hate and defamation. Request for immediate arrest. In a luxury hotel suite, Claire watched the news report on the fire. Her eyes lit up. Ted entered, his face pale. "We've been exposed. Police identified Donnie, and Marcus has the footage." Claire didn't blink. "We still have one last card." "No!" Ted gasped. "I'm out. They can throw me in prison." Claire scoffed and pulled out an envelope. "What about your wife? Does she know the money you took from the union was diverted from the legal support fund for sexual harassment victims?" Ted turned ghost white. Claire whispered, "I don't need your loyalty. Just don't betray me." That night, Amara received a package left at the front door. Inside was a pair of scorched baby shoes, alongside it a note. "Next time, it won't be the backyard. It'll be your child's bedroom. Los Angeles at dawn." From the 32nd floor of the Horizon Grand Hotel, Amara Jackson sat before the mirror. Her deep blue blazer, pinned with a silver-winged emblem, the symbol of Horizon Airlines, reflected an air of icy strength. But behind her dark eyes, a storm had only just begun to settle. She glanced down at her phone screen. As the press conference ended, Marcus stepped forward into the crowd. "I hereby resign as CEO of Horizon Airlines. My successor will be Amara Jackson." The hall erupted. Amara froze in disbelief. Marcus looked at her. "You defended what I never dared to face. Now it's time for you to change the skies." Federal Detention Center, California, 6 days after Amara Jackson was announced as the new CEO of Horizon Airlines. Clare Ramsay sat alone in an interrogation room facing a high-security tablet, the only device allowed for specially designated inmates. She hadn't spoken a word to anyone in the past 72 hours, but now she simply smiled. Her fingers tapped gently on the screen, entering a password only she knew. A prompt appeared. "Accessing Horizon Cloud Archive. Security inheritance verification required." She typed CLARAMSAYHQADMINTWOTHHOUSENDSEVENTSHED. Within seconds, the entire archive of internal emails, documents, and notes from 2008 to 2022 appeared. Claire muttered under her breath. "They thought firing me was enough? They forgot I built the damn security infrastructure. I was the foundation." She hit send. A 6-gigabyte encrypted folder transmitted to a single address at scalpelmediaprotonmail.com 9 a.m. the next morning. Amara was in a strategy meeting on the 40th floor of Horizon headquarters. The room was quiet, but thick with gravity. Evelyn had just concluded a presentation on HR restructuring when a flustered IT staffer burst in. "Ms. Amara, we have a serious issue. An independent media group named Scalpel Media just released leaked internal documents." He held out his screen. The headline blazed in red. "Horizon Airlines covered up 2019 near crash of Flight 731. New CEO implicated." Amara shot to her feet. A 15-minute expose video immediately began circulating across platforms. The leaked materials included an email from Claire instructed the maintenance team to withhold Engine 3 error notification from FAA in 2019. An internal memo marked "for management circulation only," where Amara's name appeared as regional senior advisor back when she was Marcus's wife, with no executive authority. That afternoon, public reaction exploded. The hashtag # Amara knows began trending. Supporters posted, "She was just a regional advisor, not in charge." Claire was the safety officer, not Amara. Critics roared, "If you were in the system, you're guilty with the system." Why didn't she speak out back then? Amara sat alone in her office. Her phone rang nonstop. Donors demanded statements. Reporters requested interviews. Evelyn rushed in, visibly tense. "We need to go public now. If not, they'll write the whole story without us." Amara nodded. Her voice was low but steely. "Schedule a press conference." "But not the usual kind. I'm not here to justify. I'm here to reform how this company operates." Over 3 million people tuned into the surprise live stream that night. Amara stepped onto the stage. No script, no teleprompter, no legal team by her side. She looked directly into the camera. "I know many of you are angry, and I agree. The leaked documents are real. In 2019, I held the Regional Safety Advisor title. I had no authority to approve or conceal technical errors. But I could have spoken up. I didn't. I was afraid of losing my position, my income, my husband, who was building Horizon. Today, as CEO, I am not asking for forgiveness. I am asking to prove that the one who once stayed silent will now be the first to change the system." The room stirred with murmurs. Amara continued, "I've just signed an order authorizing a full independent audit of all technical flight records from the past 10 years. We are also initiating full cooperation with the FAA and the Department of Transportation. I am calling on the union, even those who once stood by Clare, to help me restore ethical integrity in aviation. Because if I can't face my past, I don't deserve to shape this industry's future." A media earthquake followed. CNN. For the first time, a U.S. CEO publicly admits personal failure and calls for internal corporate audits. NBC. Comeback Queen Amara Jackson faces the storm and leads through it. In her cell, Clare Ramsay watched from a small TV. She hurled the remote at the wall, screaming, "No! No! She was supposed to be ruined!" A passing female guard smirked. "Looks like she played her cards face up, and still won." The next day, the New York Times published an op-ed titled, "From Victim to Reformer, Amara Jackson and the Power of Unarmed Leadership." Critics began to soften. Supporters erupted in celebration. A new hashtag #sign We Stand With Amara soared to the #1 trend nationwide. Amara sat alone in her office. The lights were off. Sunset spilled through the glass. Isaiah slept in the next room. Marcus brewed tea. She stared at the whiteboard where she had written, on her first day as CEO, transparency, courage, no repeats. She smiled to herself and whispered, "Claire thought the truth would bury me, but she forgot. It's the truth that sets me free." 3 weeks later, Amara Jackson held her ground as CEO amidst a storm of scandal. The wave of public backlash had begun to ease. The audits initiated by Amara were being conducted transparently and were praised by the press as a bold and rare act of leadership in American corporate history. Amara had been invited to speak at the National Women in Leadership Forum, a personal invitation from the president. But as Marcus and Evelyn discussed her speech, Amara froze in front of a small local news article. A tiny headline read, "Haitian woman reopens lawsuit against Clare Ramsay over discrimination and harassment in 2016, previously dismissed but revived due to newly discovered evidence." Amara stared at the faded black and white photo, a thin face, eyes filled with past pain, Monique Delacroix. She quietly folded the paper and said, "I have to find this woman." The next morning, Amara and Evelyn arrived at a temporary housing complex in Inglewood, where Monique was living with her young daughter. Monique opened the door, dark circles under her eyes, her demeanor cautious. But when she recognized Amara, she froze. "You're the woman Claire slapped on the plane." Amara nodded gently. "And I'm here because I believe you were the first person she ever slapped. Only no one had a phone out back then." Tears welled in Monique's eyes. In a small kitchen, Monique began to recount. "I used to be an assistant trainer for chief flight attendants at Horizon. Claire was my direct supervisor. I reported her for forcing trainees to serve drinks to VIPs in private rooms after flights. 3 days later, I was transferred to the kitchen, then fired for a lack of team coordination. No one believed me. No one asked. I lost my home, lost custody of my child, lost my temporary asylum papers. Amara gripped Monique's hand. I believe you, and this time, the world will hear you. 2 days later, Amara convened an expanded board meeting demanding a retrieval of HR archive files from 2015 to 2017. Many files had been wiped from the system, but thanks to Evelyn's newly implemented cloud backup, a hidden email thread was recovered. Among the emails, Monique is being difficult again. Maybe time to use Plan C. She'll break once her visa is threatened. Clare Ramsay to HR Manager, April 2016. And get her signature on the resignation form or reminder of what happened to Cheryl. The boardroom fell silent. Amara looked at them all. This is no longer just about me or Monique. This is about a system that once empowered people like Clare Ramsay, and I am declaring today we will end it at its root. That evening, Amara appeared on 60 Minutes sharing Monique's story, calling for the reopening of all previously rejected HR cases, and pledging full restitution of salaries, benefits, and dignity to every employee forced out under Clare's reign. The audience erupted. Monique sat quietly backstage, tears falling down her cheeks. 3 days later, the U.S. Attorney's Office released a statement. With the emergence of new evidence, the case against Clare Ramsay, including charges related to human trafficking, intimidation of asylum seekers, and serious HR misconduct, will be reopened under federal law. Evelyn whispered, "This time Clare won't just go to prison. She may never be granted release." Inside the federal prison, Clare Ramsay screamed when she learned that Monique had come back. "That girl should have starved in 2016. She can't come back." But this time no one listened. The cell block TV played a broadcast of Amara exiting the federal building, hand in hand with Monique, beneath a banner that read, "Horizon Airlines, no shadow lasts forever." At Los Angeles International Airport, a group of female flight attendants stood quietly before the staff bulletin board. One of them whispered, "Amara didn't just survive. She turned the whole system into a monument of justice." Federal Court, Courtroom Number 3, Los Angeles. The air was thick, like a storm awaiting its first lightning strike. Every seat was filled with journalists, civil rights activists, former victims, human rights attorneys, and even ex-employees of Horizon Airlines. Cameras from CNN, ABC, and even the BBC were set and ready. Outside, a crowd of hundreds held signs. "Justice for Monique. We believe Amara. No immunity for racism." In the front row, Amara Jackson sat flanked by two people. Marcus Ellison, with eyes steady as stone, and Monique Delacroix, her face unusually calm, as if she had finally stepped out of an 8-year-long frozen nightmare. The gavel struck. Judge Margaret Holloway, a silver-haired woman with a stern face, declared, "This court is now in session for the trial of Clare Ramsay, charged with conspiracy to traffic humans, abuse of employees, bribery, defamation, obstruction of justice, and attempted murder." Clare Ramsay was led in, hands cuffed, her hair pinned back, but unable to hide the haggardness in her appearance. She wore a gray blazer prepared by her legal team, but the arrogant tilt of her head remained. She glanced across the courtroom, eyes briefly meeting Amara's, then turned away. For the plaintiffs, attorney Evelyn Ross represented Amara, Monique, and 12 other former employees, interns or staff who had been terminated for standing up to Clare. On the defense, attorney Charles Lambert, a familiar name in high society legal circles, sat with a face as rigid as marble. Day 1. Opening statements. Evelyn stood, her voice firm and precise. Your Honor, today we are not merely accusing one individual. We are confronting an entire apparatus built on power, racism, and years of calculated silence. The defendant is not just a person who made mistakes. She is the embodiment of a system that protected wrongdoing for the sake of status. We will present evidence from Horizon's internal archives, video recordings, sworn testimonies, and above all, the truth from the very people the defendant tried to erase from existence. Clare scoffed. Evelyn looked directly at her. You may smirk today, but the truth doesn't have to shout. It only needs to be heard clearly. Day 2. First witness, Monique Delacroix. The room fell silent as Monique took the stand. She wore a white blouse. Her wrists still have faint marks from the night she had been coerced into signing her resignation in 2016. Her voice trembled, but it was steady. Clare forced me to train young flight attendants to entertain VIP clients after flights. When I refused, she said I didn't understand American law, reminded me I was a refugee without a green card. 3 days later, I was reassigned to kitchen duty, then fired. Evelyn asked, do you have any evidence? Monique nodded. A short audio clip was played. Clare's voice. Sign it, or I'll call ICE right now. You think I don't have contacts in immigration? The courtroom erupted. Clare yelled, Lies! Fabrication! Judge Holloway banged her gavel. Order! One more outburst, and the defendant will be penalized for disrupting court proceedings. Day 3. Second witness, Amara Jackson. Amara took the stand, sunlight streaming through the window, casting a strange glow over her. I was slapped on a flight because my baby laughed. I was humiliated for my skin color and for the seat I had rightfully paid for. But I'm not here today because of the slap. I'm here because Clare abused her power, not just against me, but against dozens of others who didn't have a phone to record it. If there hadn't been a live stream after the fire, if there hadn't been public support, I'd still be in jail today, and Clare would still be in power. Evelyn asked, What kept you going through the detention, the smear campaigns, the death threats? Amara looked Clare straight in the eye. Because I refuse to let my son grow up in an America where silence is safer than the truth. Day 5. Digital evidence. Investigators presented the following. Security footage from Horizon in 2017 shows Clare slapping a male flight attendant who refused to serve alcohol to a director's close friend. Emails from Clare proposing to cause a technical error to get rid of a supervisor who had filed a report against her. Wire transfers to the assassin who attempted to kill Amara, discovered on his phone after the failed attack. Day 6. Public reaction. CNN, MSNBC, and Time all dubbed the trial. The Reckoning, the biggest purge in U.S. aviation since the 90s. Hundreds who had once stayed silent now emailed messages of support to Amara. Other airlines began internal ethics reviews following Horizon's lead. In the courtroom, Clare grew silent. The smugness was gone, replaced by darting, uncertain eyes. Final day. The verdict. Judge Margaret Holloway read aloud. With overwhelming evidence and testimony, this court finds the defendant, Clare Ramsay, guilty of human trafficking, employee abuse, attempted murder, bribery, obstruction of justice, and compromising aviation safety. Sentencing 175 years in federal prison without parole. Clare screamed, "This is a lie! I served that company for 20 years. I upheld standards." Amara stood looking directly at her. And by those standards, people lost their homes, their hope, even their legal status. Who were you upholding them for? Hatred? Clare said nothing. The gavel struck one final time. Outside the courthouse, the crowd erupted. Monique hugged her daughter tightly. Marcus held Amara's hand while Evelyn smiled quietly behind them. Amara stepped to the microphone and spoke. This is not just a verdict for Clare Ramsay. This is a verdict for every system that ever told us silence is safer. Number. The truth is always worth standing for. 3 weeks after the historic trial that sentenced Clare Ramsay, Amara Jackson, the new CEO of Horizon Airlines, was standing before the Q3 shareholders conference, presenting her management restructuring plan. The spotlight cast across her face, strong, clear, unshaken. Her presentation was praised as a redefinition of corporate justice in American enterprise. The entire room applauded. But as Amara stepped down, Marcus handed her a phone vibrating nonstop. You need to see this. On the screen was a post from a newly created anonymous X account. Proof that Amara Jackson once colluded with Horizon's internal racial bias system. Below is an email she approved, prioritizing white flight attendants for VIP service. Staffordicum expose Amara, or reverse racism. Attached was a screenshot of an email with the subject, Final approval, VIP crew selection, 2018 drafted by HR, signed off by A. Jackson. Amara turned pale. 4 hours later, the post had gone viral across every platform. The hashtag # expose Amara surged to the top 3 nationwide. TV headlines read, Anti-racism CEO once approved covert discrimination. Amara, victim or media manipulator? An anonymous X account followed up. This email was recovered from Horizon's server, specifically from Clare Ramsay's archive before her arrest. Comments flooded men with skepticism. Is she a hypocrite? I used to support Amara, but if this is real, who can we even trust? At Horizon Airlines HQ, an emergency meeting was called. Evelyn slammed a folder onto the table. This is Claire's final trick. She doesn't need to leave prison to destroy you. All she has to do is plant doubt. Amara opened her laptop, searching the old archive system. The email did exist under her name, but the first line read, Template prepared by Ramsay, needs dummy signature for board optics. Amara's breath quickened. I never saw this email, but it still bears my name. Inside the federal prison, Clare Ramsay smirked as she watched the growing debate on TV. I may be behind bars, but her reputation will rot in the free world. She sent out 3 more forged emails to various journalists. The next morning, on Good Morning America, the anchor held printed documents. We have not yet verified them, but a series of emails under Amara Jackson's name are causing an uproar in the aviation industry. Horizon stock plummeted 12%. Donors began to demand answers. Investors called for an internal ethics hearing. Marcus entered the office, his face hard as steel. They don't believe in your past anymore. Amara said nothing. Then make them believe in your present. That evening, Amara live-streamed to 18 million viewers. She sat in front of a webcam, no backdrop, no makeup, just a woman armed with truth. I didn't come from power. I wasn't trained to survive hate-driven media. I'm just a mother who was once slapped, humiliated, jailed, and now slandered. I never approved any email that proposed racial discrimination. But I worked in a system that tolerated it, and maybe, through my silence back then, I unwittingly prolonged what was wrong. Today I don't speak to save myself. I speak to reclaim the ideals that brought me. No one, including me, is immune to the truth. Social media erupted. She owns up, no one does that anymore. That's real leadership. The next morning, Evelyn released a digital forensics report. They proved the phrase prepared by Ramsay had been deliberately removed using AI deepfake tools. The email's timestamp was 12 seconds off from Horizon's internal clock. The original poster was a hacker paid via cryptocurrency from an account linked to Claire's former lawyer. The federal court issued a second indictment against Clare Ramsay for personal identity sabotages and interference with national technical systems. Media sentiment reversed. CNN ran the headline, Amara Jackson, from survivor to CEO, a case study in battling disinformation. At the post-crisis meeting, an elderly man stood up. I once thought you were just a media figurehead. He looked at Amara. But today, I think, you're what America forgot it needed, a leader who doesn't hide her flaws, but confronts them. The board stood. Applause filled the room. On TV, Claire screamed behind bars. They believe her. That crazy woman cries on camera and the whole country forgives her. A female guard whispered as she locked the cell. No. The country didn't forgive. They learned how to tell the truth from lies. That night, Amara sat in the backyard of their new home. Isaiah slept in her arms. Marcus read the news beside her. She smiled softly and whispered, Victory doesn't come from perfection. It comes from refusing to let go of what's right. Marcus nodded. And you just held on to it, for a whole generation. 3 months after the internal document crisis, at Horizon Airlines headquarters, a 5-story glass building in downtown Los Angeles, the rainbow flag flew for the first time. A massive banner of Amara Jackson hung alongside it, bearing the slogan, not just a CEO, a change. But for Amara, today wasn't a celebration. It was the day of Clare Ramsay's final sentencing. Federal court, final hearing. Clare Ramsay appeared before the cameras in an orange prison jumpsuit. Her face looked more worn than ever, though her eyes still carried a glint of stubborn arrogance. Judge Margaret Holloway, who presided over the original trial, looked down at a case file as thick as an encyclopedia. This hearing concerned supplemental charges, sabotage of national data infrastructure, fabrication of documents to destroy personal reputations, and incitement of attempted murder. Evelyn, Amara's attorney, addressed the court. No one in this room doubts the true nature of the defendant, Clare Ramsay. But today, we are not merely seeking a prison sentence. We are seeking a symbolic judgment, to declare to America that power is no longer a mask to conceal contempt for others. The verdict. Clare was sentenced to life in federal prison without parole, stripped of citizenship rights, and permanently banned from appearing in any form of media. The gavel struck like the final note of a dark symphony. Claire screamed as she was dragged away. You'll regret this. She's no saint. Amara didn't respond. She stood quietly, her gaze calm, as if the ending had long been written, and now finally it was printed in black and white. The rebirth of an airline. Within 90 days, Amara had restructured the entire Horizon Airlines system. The old HR department was completely dissolved. A Transparency and Multicultural Commission was formed, with representatives from 12 different countries. All employees underwent retraining on workplace culture, anti-discrimination, and signed a new conduct code. In-flight camera, systems and complaint handling protocols were integrated with independent AI verification. Most importantly, Amara launched the Zero Disrespect policy. Any verified instance of racial or gender discrimination would result in immediate termination regardless of rank. On CNN, a commentator noted, For the first time, an airline isn't advertising cheaper fares or better service. They're advertising respect. On an October afternoon at the White House, the current president, a Latina woman, invited Amara Jackson to speak at the National Forum on Rebuilding Corporate Justice. Amara walked to the podium. Golden lights poured down. Her curly hair was tied high. Her eyes, deep, steady, shone with something no school could teach, credibility forged through blood, tears, and truth. I wasn't born to be a CEO. I was born into a single-mother household, where dinner was sometimes whatever was left in the fridge. I was once kicked out of a store because of my skin, slapped on a plane for sitting in first class, jailed simply for telling the truth. And now I stand here, not because I'm a superhero, but because I refuse to be silent. I don't want to be the first to do this. I just don't want to be the last. The entire room rose in applause, even the president. Outside the forum, people were still reading her story. A 7-year-old black girl tugged her mother's hand, pointing at Amara's picture. I want to fly planes like her. An elderly Korean woman shed her tears. I once wasn't irritated because of my name. Today, I feel hope. A young white man held a sign high. I've learned silence is complicity. Amara's face graced the cover of Time magazine, captioned, "Woman of the Year, the sky is hers." The day after the honor ceremony, Amara returned home. Marcus was cooking in the kitchen. Isaiah, now over a year old, toddled across the yard. She sank into a chair and opened her mail. Among the letters was one written in blue ink, from Monique Delacroix. Amara, thank you for not only saving yourself. You restored faith for millions, and I will tell this story to my daughter every night. So she knows that black people aren't born only to endure, but to lead. Amara folded the letter, eyes glistening. Marcus came over and rested his hand on her shoulder. You did it, Amara. She nodded, whispering, No. We did. She lifted Isaiah in her arms, looked at her son, then toward the brilliant blue sky, a sky that once felt too vast to reach. Now was the place where her name would fly. A legacy. Final reflection. The message of the entire story, the story of Amara Jackson, is not merely the journey of a black woman who was slapped on a plane, falsely accused, imprisoned, and hunted by fake news. It is a story of collective awakening, where justice is no longer confined to courtrooms, but redefined within the conscience of each individual, when the slap was a beginning, not the end. Clare Ramsay thought one slap would force Amar Toto to bow her head. Instead, it awakened a long silent volcano, the pain of victims who had been insulted, dismissed, or excluded because of their skin, gender, or circumstance. This story reveals that injustice isn't always the ending. Sometimes it's the beginning of a profound internal revolution. A system is only strong if we let it stand. Amara wasn't imprisoned by walls, but by a system willing to believe lies because they were more comfortable than the truth. But when she chose not to be silent, when she said, I am not perfect, but I am not wrong, that system began to break. Justice is not the absence of lies. Justice is the presence of courage. Fake news can't burn the truth. If the truth lives to the end, they used every weapon, forged documents, manipulated media, edited footage, and a hate-fueled mob to build a distorted reality. But Amara didn't fight with rage. She fought with honesty, transparency, and dialogue. She didn't hide the truth. She exposed it because she believed the truth doesn't need protection. It only needs to be heard. From the slapped woman to the one who runs the airline, Amara did just survive. Shiro stood above and became a symbol of leadership. Not leadership for power, but leadership for transformation, turning an airline into a model of fairness, transparency, and humanity. She taught America to lead again, not with titles, but with ethics. And finally, we were born to endure. We were born to change. Amara represents the millions who have been overlooked, doubted, and stopped midway because of prejudice. But this story proves one thing. We were not born to endure. We were born to redefine what's possible. Conclusion. Amara Jackson and Clare Ramsay is a story of survival, resistance, retaliation, and triumph, not through violence, but through unbreakable resilience. It teaches us that a slap doesn't just sting the face, it can awaken an entire society. One woman standing for truth can bring a whole system to its knees. And faith, even pierced by 1,000 knives of falsehood, can rise again when defended by a heart rooted in honesty. Amara is not a hero. She is all of us, if we refuse to stay silent